Politicians love telling Australians that renewables are the cheapest form of energy, and none more than Energy Minister Chris Bowen.
Renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy.
Renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy.
The CSIRO, our scientific agency, and AEMO that runs our energy grid have done the work. Their analysis shows us that renewables are cheaper than coal, cheaper than gas, and much cheaper than nuclear.
I don't believe you.
The analysis Bowen cites is the CSIRO's GenCost report. GenCost is the only serious analysis in Australia still claiming renewables are cheaper than coal. Even the renewables-driven integrated system plan published by the energy market operator does not say this. You can see our explanation why in this video. GenCost is supposed to provide accurate policy and technology neutral cost estimates, but that's not what it does, especially when it comes to coal. The CSIRO's report makes 3 unobjective and unrealistic assumptions that lead to its conclusion that renewable energy, and not coal, is the cheapest form of new electricity. So number 1, GenCost assumes new coal plants would have to be built on a completely new site, known as a greenfield site. That's because the lead author, Paul Graham, thinks that new build means the same as greenfield.
We've had a long-standing approach that we only include greenfield new projects in GenCost.
This makes no sense because new plants can be built on both new and existing sites. For a greenfield site, GenCost assumes 20% of capex, or $630 million, would have to be spent on land and development, plus $106 to $212 million for a new rail line. But building on a brownfield site means the necessary roads, railways, mines, transmission lines, substations, permits, water supply, office buildings, and other facilities are already in place, massively saving on costs. And plenty of our current coal sites were specifically designed to leave space for new units, like Mount Piper in New South Wales, which has land available for 2 more units, same with Loy Yang B in Victoria. If Australia were to decide to expand coal generation, brownfield sites would be the obvious place to start. Or we could refurbish existing coal units to expand their technical life. This would be even cheaper than building new units. A 2018 GHD report, cited in previous GenCost editions, quoted the price of refurbishment as being between $120 to $450 per kilowatt. That is less than 1/10 of the cost estimate for a new plant given in the latest GenCost. Since GenCost's model assumes a new coal plant lasts 30 years, on a like-for-like basis, the 10-year life extension estimate of $300 per kilowatt is less than 1/5 of the cost of a new build. And yet the CSIRO exclusively focuses on new build technology, meaning GenCost doesn't even consider refurbishment as an option. Number 2, GenCost assumes unrealistically high fuel prices for coal. The CSIRO takes its fuel prices from individual coal plant estimates in the 2023 Inputs, Assumptions and Scenarios report published by AEMO. They give a range using both a low and high estimate for coal prices. But instead of using the minimum of the low prices and the maximum of the high prices, like they do for gas, the CSIRO takes the average of the lows and the absolute maximum of the highs. This pushes up the upper bound of the coal price range, making coal seem much more expensive than it actually is. And not only that, but the CSIRO's model locks in this giant Ukraine war-induced price spike in 2023 for the entire life of the new coal plant. And they did the same thing with uranium prices, which we explain in this video. The CSIRO has already been grilled in Senate estimates about their coal price methodology and their choice to only consider greenfield projects in last year's draft GenCost.
Why have you chosen a minimum as a mean and used the maximum for the maximum? That doesn't seem to make any mathematical sense.
Yes, I can explain that, Senator. So there has been a change in the methodology that AEMO use, that they've stopped publishing a coal price for new coal plants. In the absence of that information, all we can look at is the coal prices that current plants are receiving. Now, the problem with looking at coal prices for current plants is that their prices actually reflect maybe long-term contracts that they've been able to successfully go into before, for example, the latest coal price spike occurred. But if you are a greenfield coal plant who's coming in, you don't have an existing contract, you're going to face those higher prices. So that's why we have to take the high price.
It makes no sense to me. Even that explanation still makes no sense, because if you want to get a low point, like the lowest possible point, it makes no sense for me to take the mean of an existing range, especially a mean which some of those plants, like Eraring in your model are at high points due to the Ukraine war.
So did they fix any of this in the final report? No. Number 3. The CSIRO chooses an expensive plant design that's never been built anywhere. This is exactly what they did to nuclear in the previous draft GenCost. As we explain in this video, the authors ignored proven large-scale designs and instead chose a single unproven design of a cancelled small modular reactor project. Similarly with coal, the GenCost model does not look at the cost of the most recent design to be built in Australia, a supercritical plant. Instead, it only considers advanced ultra-supercritical plants, a more efficient but more expensive design at steam pressures and temperatures higher than any coal plant ever constructed globally. The reason given by the authors for exclusively focusing on an expensive yet-to-be-built design is that they think this design is more likely in the current political environment. Politics was also one of the reasons Paul Graham gave for excluding large-scale nuclear in favour of SMRs in the previous draft.
I guess that was reinforced by the government of the day, which was very focused on small modular reactors.
Is it too much to ask for our national scientific agency to give us the numbers to inform political debate rather than steering their analysis to fit their read of politics? There is no reason to choose an advanced ultra-supercritical design from a purely engineering or economic point of view, just like there wasn't for choosing SMRs over proven large-scale nuclear. The CSIRO has imposed a policy decision onto a supposedly policy-neutral report. Of course, policymakers should consider how options help or hinder emissions reduction, but that is not the job of CSIRO economists who are meant to be giving us policy-neutral cost estimates. The CSIRO should be providing facts so that politicians can make decisions about the various trade-offs, not the other way around. So how much more does this advanced ultra-supercritical plant cost? We can compare CSIRO's capital cost assumptions to Australia's newest coal plant built at Kogan Creek in Queensland in 2007. This is a supercritical plant which cost $2 billion in today's dollars for a 750 megawatt capacity, making it less than half the price of GenCost's hypothetical plant. So bringing it all together, let's see what happens when we fix the CSIRO's cost estimates so that they represent realistic choices. GenCost's original numbers show a lot of overlap between renewables and the bottom third of the coal range, with the lower bound of wind and solar being a tiny bit cheaper. But look what happens when we combine Kogan Creek's capital cost with post-price spike fuel prices, taking the minimum and not the average for the lower bound. Coal is now undeniably cheaper than renewables. And if we use the refurbishment capital costs, coal becomes less than half the price of renewables. This is backed up by the Australian Energy Regulator's data on bidding price when black coal is the price setter in the market. Taking out the recent price spike, over the last 5 years, coal has set the price in Queensland and New South Wales at around $53 and $59 per megawatt hour, well within the ranges we calculated. It's now abundantly clear that the CSIRO has not produced an objective policy and technology neutral report. The next draft of GenCost is due for release any day now. If the authors don't fix their unrealistic assumptions about coal plants, politicians will continue pointing to GenCost as proof renewables are cheapest when this is simply not true. And Australians will continue to pay for our government's incoherent and unsupported policy choices that arise from such flawed analysis. The CSIRO and policymakers need to be honest with the public about the trade-offs between reducing costs and reducing emissions. Otherwise, we risk failing at both.